John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing real well, Kate. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me with you. Although I have to say, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of the short end of the stick because my kitchen doesn't smell nearly as good as the kitchen you're in probably smells right now.
Oh, yeah, but you have wine there, so I think we're probably even.
I do. You know what? You're right. I think it's like a 50-50 split of who's winning this one today. Tell me a little bit about where we are. Where is this beautiful kitchen that I'm looking at?
So we are in the West Village of Manhattan at 225 Varick Street. So this is also our home office for all of our Shake Shacks around the world. And what we do here is the team and I gather together, and it's really twofold. So this is where we research, develop, and ideate new items for our Shake Shack menu to be deployed all over the world. And then we also look at our existing menu items, which have been long loved by our fans for 16 years, and we look at ways that we can improve them. Sort of never resting on our laurels, and look for ways we can constantly tweak and hone and refine items and using great ingredients. We take our sandwiches very seriously here at Shake Shack, and this one is no different. So this was sort of a little take on a holiday, Thanksgiving. That was definitely our inspiration, and Shake Shack was actually born from a fine dining restaurant group. Not many people know that. Ingredients are really at the core of what we do. And so we look at ways to continue to be that roadside burger stand for America and beyond by incorporating flavors using ingredients that speak to who we are. And we really look to sort of put them together in a very thoughtful way that's delicious. So this right here is our holiday chicken shack, as we're calling it. So it's our hormone and antibiotic-free chicken that's marinated, breaded, and crisped in some hot oil. And then we have a bacon cranberry relish. And then we also have a plethora of local and organic root vegetables turned into a slaw with some of our dressing that we use to season that slaw. It's our Shack ranch sauce. And then we sandwich that in our butter toasted Martin's potato bun. All right, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. There's many layers of flavors that make up this sandwich, and each of those items need to be prepared separately. So we're gonna actually start off at the top with the bacon cranberry relish. So real simple, we'll have all the recipes attached to this. So we'll kind of go right through it. We're gonna start with some amazing bacon that's produced for us by the wonderful folks at Nyman Ranch. And it's chopped up into a small dice, just so when you're experiencing it through the sandwich, there's no sort of fighting or pulling of the meat. So we basically put that in a pan, and we don't need any oil to it because it will render out some of that fat and that delicious flavor. Once that starts to sweat, we add a little shallots, some diced shallots to it. Which have some great flavor, and they will sort of start building the foundation for it. And then once we do that, we'll add some beautiful fresh cranberries, which many people have on their table during the holidays. And then just a few things really to help season it. We love cranberries for their flavor and their texture, but a couple things they need. They need some liquid. They need a little bit of sugar to balance it. And then some spice really to enhance it. I want the cranberries and the bacon to sort of be the main characters, if you will, and then and just support it with little hints of flavors that sort of warm the soul during the cooler months.
It's so cool that you use fresh cranberries for this and not like a canned variety, like your sort of more traditional canned cranberry. I should say traditional, meaning old-fashioned.
Sure.
I love that you're using fresh berries. I think that's really interesting. And you were saying the sugar and some liquid to kind of help them prepare. I don't know if a lot of people know how to cook with fresh cranberries. I don't.
Yeah, no, it's it can be a little intimidating, but hopefully you'll see it's pretty simple. And there are a lot of different roads you can take. You could add the bacon. You can omit it. One of the other things I chose, you need a liquid in them to actually stew the cranberries. Typically orange juice is used, sometimes apple juice. So what I actually have here is a mixture of fresh orange juice and fresh beet juice. Beets are growing this time of year as well, so they're super seasonal. They got great vegetal quality, and they pair really wonderfully with cranberries, and it's not often paired. So I thought it'd be interesting and delicious to do that. So
that's so cool. What a cool idea.
Just making sure that the bacon just moves around a little bit, doesn't stick to the pan, and it'll take about 5 minutes for it to sort of naturally do its thing. And then another seasoning, really just all these flavors are hoping to complement the cranberries, like I was saying. So just a little bit of orange zest and some of the juice, which will go right in there. So we could actually do that now, where I just take a zester. This half of an orange has been washed and dried. And then use a zester, and you really just want to take that outer flesh off. If you start going inside and get that pith, you'll get some bitter flavor profiles, which in some recipes could be great, but I just chose not to do it in this one.
You also use that zester in such a way that it's more like a paring knife when it pulls off, as opposed to rubbing the orange against that. And then you don't know how deep you get into that pith.
Yes, that's a great point. I'm quite impressed that you noticed that. Most people to that would just keep zesting this way, and then that's when you can get the pith. So great job with that, Kate.
But yeah, I know that because I make that mistake all the time.
See, there you go. So then I just sort of like tap down the zester right on top of the orange, and then so that fresh zest goes right in. And then just we like to use everything. We don't like to waste anything. So if I wasn't going to use this in this recipe, I'd use it somewhere else. But I am going to use it. It'll give it a little bit more flavor. And there we go. Come over here, our stove. Check on our bacon, which is looking great. Now the bacon has rendered out some of its fat.
That I'm having such bacon envy right now.
Well, we'll have to get one over to you real soon. So now I have my shallots, which I've already diced in advance, and I've diced them small just so it helps them cook. And then we'll just dump them right in. And one of the important things with food is sort of building those layers of flavor. If we just sort of threw everything in a pot, it could work, and it probably tastes pretty good. But doing them in stages really helps build different layers of foundation and really greatly improves the overall flavor profile. So that's really important to us. So we try to take all the necessary steps to maximize the ingredients and the end result.
So what you're saying is, if you take a few extra minutes to do it in order, it actually works out, and recipes are written that way for a reason. Unlike dumping everything into a pot and letting it figure itself out.
That's exactly right.
And that's why you're the professional chef. While you're working on that, John, I was wondering if you had a Thanksgiving dish that was your favorite.
Thanksgiving time for me is really all about the sides. I know the turkey's the star, but I really enjoy seeing all the little plates and dishes that are on the side. And when I host Thanksgiving, which I normally do, that's my jam. And that's where I like to kind of go crazy, but keep it very much sort of relatable and enjoyable for my family who are eating. So I love the sides, and what I tried to do here is incorporate a lot of those sides actually into this. So all the different vegetables, which you'll see in the slaw in a little bit, tie into that, the cranberry relish, and then also the gravy mayo as well. So I've incorporated what I really like into this, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
I think you would find you're in good company there. I think everybody might, like, the turkey is there and you're like, great, turkey, but it's really the sides that everyone gets jazzed about. That's what my family is the same way.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we've got our bacon and our shallots where we want. Now's the time when we can, because it makes sense to do this, which is why we do it. So I'm adding in my orange and beet juice, our cranberries, and then I have here cinnamon stick, star anise, and the sugar. So that'll go in, the sugar will go in. I'm gonna hold back them just for a second. And this is just a mix of salt and pepper, which I did in advance. So this will go on the stove now. The cinnamon stick, you could use ground cinnamon. I like whole because we have them and they don't get used enough and they don't get enough love. So I wanna give it some love. And
They
then
look fancy too. They look festive. It's always
Yeah.
nice to like see that cinnamon stick cooking in a pot or something.
absolutely, and it looks like I know what I'm doing if I'm using cinnamon stick instead of powdered cinnamon. So here's a little trick too. This is star anise, which is amazing. It's got great flavor. It's got a lot of that warm holiday spice. I don't want to throw the whole thing in because you wouldn't be able to eat it. Someone could choke on it. Nor do I want to pulverize it because using the whole one is too much. But I'll take the same zester and I'm going to zest a little bit of this right into it. And 8 or 9 shakes is what I put on the recipe, and that's what I'll put inside here.
John, do you have any recommendations for people who maybe use a spice grinder for something like this too? Is that an option for the cinnamon stick or for the star anise?
Absolutely. You can use a spice grinder to do that as well. The only thing I would say is just whatever you grind, just make sure it's ground enough to where the end result isn't too large of a piece is all.
Okay.
But those work incredibly well. I wanted to show a way that this is kind of how I would do it at home because that's just another thing that I would need to wash. All of our hard work is done. We're going to put this on a low flame, put a lid on it, and we're going to let it cook for about 10 minutes. And then what will happen is the cranberries will do 2 things. They will start to swell up and explode and literally pop while absorbing the juice, thus creating the sort of cranberry sauce that we know that's got a very much thick consistency. Once that happens, this is what you have. You have this sort of, nice and thick and rich in sort of fruit and vegetable notes cranberry sauce with bacon.
Yum. That looks so delicious and so much more appetizing than when it just dumps out of the can.
I mean, you could use that too if you like. The only thing I would say is just taste it and make sure it tastes good. Just sort of add as you would to it. All right, so that's our cranberry sauce, and you'll see that that's going to be on top of the sandwich. Then the next thing we're going to do is go to the sage gravy mayo. Now this one's kind of fun because, we obviously couldn't serve gravy necessarily on a sandwich. It can be a little sloppy. And we like the consistency of mayonnaise. So how do we get the flavor of the holiday turkey, if you will, into that sandwich? So there's a couple of ways to do it, and I'm going to show you. The first way is to actually take some gravy, which I have here, which is a turkey gravy. But the recipe that I had given uses actually a powdered mix. Okay? I actually gave 2 recipes. One, you can use a powdered mix and just stir that into mayo with the rest of the seasonings, which I'm going to show you. Or the other way is to make your own gravy. So we're going to go the make your own gravy route, but both work really well. So we have some mayonnaise, and you can make your own mayonnaise or you can buy it.
If you make your own mayonnaise, you're a very adventurous soul.
Yes, but totally worth it. Totally worth it, I might add. But there's so many great mayos on the market now, so it's not necessary. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm taking my mayo and I'm taking my gravy, and I'm really just gonna mix the amount I need right to the bowl. And then I have some roasted garlic cloves, which are great. They're really tender. They're pre-cooked in a little bit of olive oil, and then they sort of lose their sharp garlic, spicy notes when they're raw and take on a sort of sweet, rich flavor profile. So I'm going to kind of dump them out on
I don't think people realize how easy it is to roast garlic at home. It's actually a very simple thing to do, and it tastes good on literally everything.
We agree, and we use it quite often. And this just will, make it more delicious. And then we have some fresh herbs here. We have some rosemary, which I'm just going to pull right from the stick. And then we have some thyme, and then we have sage. So
you're just using the fresh leaves. You're not preparing them in any way or drying them.
No, I'm just going to use them fresh. And what I like to do is chop them last minute, and they'll sort of release their freshness right away. If we were to have chopped them yesterday or even in the morning of, they'd be okay, but they lose a little something.
Do you have any advice for people who maybe would be more comfortable with the dried herb in terms of can you use that? Is it still effective?
Sure, dried herbs work. I prefer to use the fresh ones, but if you are going to use the dry ones, the only thing I'd say is just sort of mash them between your fingers before, or sort of like as if you were sprinkling salt. And what that'll do is it'll break it up and wake up those flavors as well.
Oh, that's a very useful tip that I have never been given. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Sort of like tea. If you were going to make yourself tea, you just sort of mash up the tea bag a little bit, then put it in the water, and it'll just be a little more fragrant, a little more alive. So the thyme leaves that I have are pretty great in the sense that the stems are not tough or woody. And, you know, I don't really like to peel the tiny leaves off thyme because it's cumbersome and it takes a while and there's so much to do in life. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is just sort of roll all the herbs together, including the stems of the thyme, which are soft, and I'm just going to chop them all up together. So it just makes it more efficient. And then I'll turn them to the side and give them another chop again. And then essentially what I have is finely chopped herbs, which will then go right into the mayo. And then for the garlic cloves, what we're going to do for the garlic cloves is use my side of the knife and just sort of smash it. It's so soft, it doesn't take much effort at all. You can see it's already done.
Wow.
And then we always put a little bit of salt and pepper in there, just because the herbs aren't seasoned and the mayo didn't have any additional salt. So putting all those things together are going to make it more delicious. I'm just going to grab a spoon and then we stir it all up.
I know once my husband sees this recipe, we're going to be putting this on literally everything in our house.
And you can. And there we go. Let's give it a taste.
Yum.
Great, good to go. Next thing we're going to do is make the dressing for the slaw. This is our recipe for our Shack Ranch dressing that we debuted less than a year ago, and we're super excited about it. Fans have been asking for years for us to have a ranch sauce, so I thought it'd be great to use for the slaw for these vegetables. So very simple to make. Again, we're going back to some delicious mayonnaise, sour cream, buttermilk, and some apple cider vinegar. So we love the dairy notes. There's 3 different elements of dairy here that all bring something wonderful to the table. The buttermilk has this amazing richness and beautiful tang to it. Sour cream, some more richness and creaminess, and of course mayonnaise. And the apple cider vinegar is nice. It sort of like cuts through that, almost like a great wine that has great balance and great acid to sort of pull you back for more. And then we've got some of the classic ranch spices, which is some cayenne pepper, salt, fresh black pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. So it's simply all those ingredients mixed together.
I feel like ranch dressing is one of those things that is like the most like memory evoking tastes of being a kid. Like ranch dressing is such an iconic flavor profile. I did not know that was what it was made up of, but I can like literally right in my head immediately I know exactly what ranch dressing is. It's just like such a big part of my memory.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. And you know, it's no secret that fans have been asking us for years to do it, and you see how easy it is. And there's so many recipes, you know, that you can vary from this. You can add hot sauce to it. You could, you know, chop any herb that you love in it. But what we wanted to do is sort of give our fans what they were asking for, but try to elevate it the best way we could by using some great ingredients. So that's our ranch sauce.
I love incorporating that into a Thanksgiving thing too, like into a Thanksgiving dish, this super classic, like very familiar flavor, but keeping it in sort of the holiday world is so fun.
Yeah. Now we're gonna have some fun with those sides we were talking about, but we're gonna keep it all raw. So we're gonna basically take another classic, which is coleslaw, but we're gonna take some maybe not so classic ingredients in putting them together. And I wanted to use the local bounty and our great farmer friends who are, you know, out there working as hard as they do every single day of their lives. And so we have some beautiful vegetables over here to incorporate into them, and I'll kind of bring them over to the camera. These are some amazing Brussels sprouts, and yeah, this is how they're grown. They're grown on a stalk. You know, last few years you see them a lot in supermarkets like this. And I love them so much. I mean, I've taken these whole things and roasted them in the oven at home for Thanksgiving and put a scissor on the table and told everyone to cut their own Brussels sprouts. And they thought I was crazy. But these have become—
I love an interactive meal.
So that's Brussels sprouts, and we got some beautiful red cabbage. So it's really all the beautiful colors of autumn that, we don't have to search hard for. It's what's being grown now. So it's really taking all these ingredients.
John, talk to me about that. I have an idea of what that vegetable is, that third one you brought in, but tell me what that one is.
This is celery root, or the French would call it celery rave. It's incredible. It's grown in the late summer, early fall, and it's almost at the point in the Northeast, at least, for being fully harvested. But it's incredible. It's earthy. It pairs well with great big wines and all different types of wines, not just big wines, but soft ones. And it's got an amazing, almost like woodsy, licoricey flavor profile to it. Not necessarily like celery. It's very, very different. But I'll show you. Once you cut through it, you have this, this another amazing root vegetable that smells wonderful. So we basically cut this like so, and then we peel around it, almost as if you were skinning a grapefruit or an orange, and keep doing that, and then we'll wash it, and then we'll do the same thing. We have some carrots here, which have been washed, but I don't peel carrots. These are grown organically, so I don't have to worry about anything being sprayed on the outside. And these happen to be purple. There's all different colors grown now, and we take this mandolin. This is actually what they call a French mandolin.
The world's scariest kitchen tool.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. But you can actually buy a lot of these vegetables already shredded now. You see them in supermarkets in bags, and I think they're doing an amazing job with them. And we buy them a lot at home, and we have fun with them. So basically what we do is we just slice these right down on the julienne cutter, which is, similar shape of what they call matchsticks. And then you have, essentially you have shredded carrots. And then here what I have is all the vegetables that make up the slaw.
I love too the idea of teaching everybody that the ingredients that grow locally and seasonally can be used in a way that is not scary and not I think people, especially looking at that celery root, and if you walked into a grocery store and saw that, you're like, what am I going to do with this? I don't know what to do with this thing that looks like a potato that isn't a potato. And I love the idea of exploring and using those ingredients in a way that is familiar, but still going to kind of expose you to what it is like to have actually fresh, actually local produce the flavor profile between that and then something that you bought in a bag that flew in from across the country is night and day. Those fresh vegetables, using them that way.
You're right. There is a difference to it. And, we love using fresh, wonderful ingredients and buying them from people that, care deeply about it. And, we build those relationships, we foster them, and, they're partners in what we do. So, and these are those celery root right now, which come out just like the carrots. And the other thing too is they all grow together, right? They grow the same time of year, and we have an expression: what grows together goes together. So there's, there are no rules really in cooking, but that's actually one that, is a rule for me to live by and to do what I do. Is to understand that they're growing next to each other in a garden or in a farm, then, they're family and want to keep them together. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, we just dump them right in here. We also have some of the red cabbage. And what I love about them, it looks like all the beautiful colored mums you see planted everywhere too. And then these are the Brussels sprouts. And then we have some of the fresh kale. And then we take our ranch dressing. And again, there's a recipe to it. I'm going to eyeball it because I think I know how much it's going to need. And I'll just mix this up. And I know that my ranch dressing seasoned because I tasted it, but the vegetables didn't get any additional seasoning. So just by simple math, I know I need to add salt and pepper. because vegetables don't come seasoned. So I add a little bit of salt and pepper, give it a mix. And this is something you can make in the morning, and the vegetables will only benefit from actually, breathing and living and sort of marrying themselves together with the dressing. And it'll really be quite nice.
While you're mixing that up, John, talk to me about a favorite memory, a Thanksgiving memory. It doesn't have to be super, super old, but again, talking about like nostalgia and having that sort of sense memory with foods, I was thinking about kind of connecting that with Thanksgiving memories or holiday memories. Do you have a favorite Thanksgiving memory?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, I have 3 children, so my wife and I oftentimes connect the things they say to the memories we had, and we'll just look at each other and sort of talk about it later on. But I think my greatest memories are now listening to them say what they love about the holiday. And, it really mirrors, some of it is almost verbatim to what, my wife and I say. So that's really touching for me and was powerful. And it's sort of one of the parent moments that I never expected to have happen, but it happens during the holidays, more so than any other time. So that's kind of it.
That's so lovely.
Okay, next thing we're gonna do is get our chicken together. This is our chicken. This is our whole free-range, hormone and antibiotic-free chicken. It's wonderful. It's lived a really good life, and we respect the people that raise the chicken, and now we're going to respect the process in which we are going to prepare it. We have 4 chicken breasts. They're boneless, they're skinless, and they're approximately 3.5 ounces each. And then we're going to marinate them. And in the recipe, it'll say that you can marinate them overnight. And this is pretty straightforward. It's a little more buttermilk right on top. And then we have paprika, garlic, salt, pepper, and a little bit of cayenne. And then we just mix that all together. And then the buttermilk will actually the acid that's in the buttermilk will get in there and sort of penetrate the chicken, and almost like a ceviche. Ceviche being the raw fish, when you add any sort of lime juice or acid to it, sort of cooks it a little bit. In that case, you'll cut the fish really small. But in this case, we leave the chicken larger, and we don't necessarily want it to be cooked in the buttermilk, but we do want it to impart a lot of flavor, and it will start to sort of break down the exterior, thus later creating a more delicious experience.
I didn't realize buttermilk was acidic like that. That might be the wrong word. That might be an uneducated way of putting it. But that's so interesting. I didn't realize that.
Well, it's the perfect way to put it is what you did. It is acidic, but not as acidic as lime or passion fruit or lemon. But it does have acid in it, and it also has that sort of tang and that richness that citrus doesn't have. So it kind of brings something else to the table, but sort of very similar. So what we'll do is we marinate, just rub it on in, and then we'll put that in the fridge for up to 6 hours, or even maybe 12 hours. You can do that as well.
This is the fun part of any sort of breaded fried experience, is this this next step.
Oh yes.
Where you get to make a mess and it's okay.
And I like to wear the gloves. It keeps me clean. And then we have some regular all-purpose flour here. And we're going to go ahead and cook one. We'll make one replica sandwich like the one I showed you before. So I've got my chicken breast, and I'm just going to put it right into the flour. And one of the things I want to be careful about is making sure that I sort of coat the chicken as much as possible, and that'll just create a better crust. And then the recipe, I also mentioned that to have a pot filled halfway with water, with a thermometer to ensure that the temperature is the right temperature to cook it in, which is 350 degrees. I'm going to cheat a little bit here and use the fryer I have behind me.
I mean, when you have those fancy tools, you should use them.
I have to use them, exactly. I even have a nice timer here. So I set the timer. We'll let the chicken cook. Now I'm going to go over to get my potato bun. And that's sort of like the last piece. You know, we've built all these steps and now we're sort of bringing it all together.
As you're doing this, since we're frying, and this is like a not uncommon theme in Thanksgiving time around the country, talk to me about mistakes people make when cooking Thanksgiving dinner in general. I'm sort of hinting at the frying of the turkey, but it doesn't have to be that if you don't want to talk about that.
I've seen enough of those videos. Well, I think, you know, I think for years, one of the mistakes has been overcooking the turkey. You know, the fear of undercooking is then replaced with, you know, completely overcooking it, drying it out, which isn't the end of the world if you have a good gravy. But, you know, there's so many tools now and thermometers and probes that can help guide you through the process. So, you know, I would just say that overcooking the turkey I've seen, and maybe under-seasoning the turkey too. You know, I think you know, you have this big mass, and if you are going to brine a chicken, a lot of that flavor of the brine can get in there. But not everyone can brine turkey. Not everyone can brine a big bird. It takes a lot of space, and you could be in a small apartment and whatnot. So you can only really season the outside and roast, and that's fine. But then after you slice it, it's okay to sprinkle a little salt, maybe drizzle with a little olive oil and maybe a little pepper on top, maybe sprinkle some herbs on top, and that'll sort of make up for any of the seasoning that you weren't able to get inside.
That's a great suggestion, especially for those of us who do live in small spaces and don't have the opportunity to brine a 15 or 20 pound bird. That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. So these are our potato buns that we use at Shack, and they're sort of classic and legendary, and we love them. They're soft, they're squishy, they have great flavor, and they also are a great vessel for a little butter toasting. So the other thing we love about them, it has this hinge on the back. That's my timer telling me that the chicken is ready, but it's got a hinge attached to the bun, which, you know, whether it be for our chicken or for our burgers, one of the things we love about them is, you know, we present our sandwiches to our guests this way with the intent for them to see the ingredients, as I did with this. So the first bite usually is here, and the last bite usually ends in the back. And what we love about the hinge is a lot of that flavor, when you're holding it this way, sort of drips to the back. So a lot of our fans will tell us, wow, that last bite is the best. And, you know, we have a lot to thank for including the hinge to collect it all, as opposed to not having a hinge and potentially dripping or running down your sleeve. So that's one of the many things we love about these potato buns. We like to toast them so it has the same sort of look as French toast. So, you know, it's really relatable to everyone. We don't want to toast it too much or too little. We want to make sure the butter does its thing, and we use some really high-end unsalted sweet cream butter that we love. The chicken is ready and it's drained. So I'm gonna put the chicken on my board, just gathering all my ingredients, keeping them all close to me. We've got our bun, so it's nice and toasted, and we feel really good about how it looks. And the butter's done its magic, and it smells delicious and warm and comforting. Then we're gonna take our cranberry relish, and I'll put about a heaping tablespoon right on the top. I'm gonna take my sage gravy mayo and put about a half a tablespoon right on the bottom. Then I'm gonna take my chicken, and I'm gonna look at which side looks best. And I wanna make sure that the best side faces the guest. And for me, this side looks the best. So I'm gonna do that, make sure it's centered. And then my slaw, which has been sitting here, I just wanna do it justice by mixing it and making sure that I get the right amount exactly where I want it. And carefully plate it, making sure it's even from left to right. You know, I always think that no matter what you're eating, I want to make it look as good as I want to make it taste.
And this isn't the time to skimp on things either. This isn't the time to like go light on the mayo or the relish or this is the time to really like get every flavor in every single bite.
And
look at that. Oh,
That's our holiday chicken shack. It's gonna
And look, now there's one for you and for me.
There you go. So there
Those
you
are
have
so
it.
stunning, John. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and one of the things I really like about and I'm passionate about trying to do is just creating that balance of flavors and textures. It's very important. So you have some of the crunchy raw vegetables with the creamy sage gravy mayo, and then you have this other textured sauce in the cranberry relish, and different flavors hopefully coming together to make something delicious. That's what we strive to do here.
It looks absolutely, absolutely incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another project. Since we opened Shake Shack, we've sold these amazing concretes. And making it concrete is not possible without a delicious custard. And our founder, Danny Meyer, grew up in the Midwest. And so he grew up eating great custard. And custard, similar to ice cream, has its differences. And one of those differences is how it's made and how it's churned. It starts off as a custard, which is dairy, egg, sugar, and whatever other flavorings. And then it goes through a chamber and gets frozen. Well, the difference between ice cream and custard is that that process in custard, it churns really slowly, so it doesn't incorporate a bunch of air into it. So what you're left with, if the ingredients are delicious, is a delicious, rich, dense, ice cream-like experience, which is incomparable. And we make amazing custards here at Shake Shack. So what I wanted to do was to use our classic vanilla custard and put it together in a seasonal way that makes a lot of sense, that could pair well with this. So I thought a lot about pumpkin pie and where that could tie in. So I went back to my farmer friends who always draw inspiration from me. And instead of using a pumpkin, I'm going to use this squash and roast this. This is what you call a Koginut squash. So many amazing squashes available now. This one has a deep, intense squash flavor. It cooks up pretty easily. It also happens to be something that's been recently developed by an amazing trend-setting locavore who breeds new and interesting vegetables. So I wanted to showcase this in our recipe. So I'd gotten this from my friends over at Norwich Meadow Farm this morning. And so here it is. It's kind of unique looking, but has all the flavor profile we know of when we have a pumpkin pie.
People forget, I sometimes think that pumpkin is squash, that it is just like a butternut squash or an acorn squash. They're all of the same family. And so even though we associate pumpkin with dessert, it's so easy to use all of these other kinds of squashes in a similar way that we use pumpkin, and just like a little bit different or fresher or new. I love this. I am also glad to hear that it's not crazy that I didn't know how to pronounce it, because it's new.
No, it's a tough one, but literally and figuratively. So this is it, and we're going to split it in half. I've washed them, I've dried them, and not the easiest thing to cut. I would just try to lay it as flat as you could, and I always like to put the knife in the middle, give it a little tap. Now I know it's not going to slide off the vegetable, and then I'm going to hold the vegetable on the top of the knife and just push down really firmly, just to make sure that it cuts and I'm safe. And there you have it. It's a beautiful color. It's got its deep, rich squash pumpkin flavor that we all know about, but we're just using a different one. I'm going to remove these seeds and the flesh. Nothing fancy here. You could take the skin off now, but it'll be difficult, very hard. Or you could roast it, and then everything gets soft, and you just peel it off nice and easy. So simple, straightforward. Take a little bit of olive oil, drizzle a little bit on top, sprinkle a little salt, put it in a 350-degree oven for about 40 minutes.
You put it face up like that?
Yes. And then 40 minutes later, we have our roasted squash.
Yeah.
So we're going to set this aside, and then our vanilla custard is going to pair with this. And then for some additional texture and a little bit of sweetness, making a honeycomb. A honeycomb using the seeds from the squash. And now what I'm going to do is take our amazing frozen custard, and it's so rich and creamy and unctuous and delicious, and I'm going to sort of serve it right back into the squash, just as a play on our concretes, and then top it with our salted pumpkin seed honeycomb. So very simple frozen dessert. Taking a spatula here, it's going to fill the Koginut squash, and then I'm going to take a couple of pieces, and if it doesn't break, you simply take the back of a knife, you sprinkle it right in, and I've got some extra toasted seeds, and then what you really have is a very familiar and comforting dessert that we all know and love, just presented in a different way, highlighting the amazing and simple ingredients that we use in it. So the next thing we're going to make is something that you can put on top of any dessert you want. You can add different flavors to it. It's a classic honeycomb where we've tried to sort of raise the bar a little bit, and staying on the pumpkin autumn holiday theme, we're going to add some of the pumpkin seeds and some fleur de sel, or really great sea salt that's got a little crunch and texture to it, into the honeycomb. So you've got great texture, you've got a little bit of salt, and you've got some of the squash. So very simple to do. We're going to start with really just adding our corn syrup and our water to a pot. It's all been pre-measured. And then it gets sugar, and that right there is going to make a caramel. So we'll keep a little eye on that. And then one other thing we're going to add is a little bit of vinegar. The vinegar will help react in the way that's needed for the honeycomb. And I'm going to show you what the end result looks like. Once you make the caramel, you'll see, we'll do this all live, but we add baking soda, then we stir it, and it sort of activates and creates this honeycomb look on the inside. And then, of course, with the pumpkin seeds and the salt, it's quite delicious. It gets very hot. The sugar will cook to 300 degrees, so it's not the kind of burn you want to have. So keep the cat and dog and kids away from the stove, but I'll show you how easy it is to make. So I've got my sugar and corn syrup in there, and it's just coming up to a simmer, and that may take a little bit of time. And then I'm going to add my salt with my pumpkin seeds together. Now I'm going to show you, while that's happening, this will get really hard like candy. There's no butter or cream. If we added butter or cream to it, you'd basically have a caramel sauce, because that would liquefy it. But in this case, you'll see we can just sort of pick it up, and once it cools, then I take it back of a knife.
Wow.
And you see here,
Oh, that looks so delicious.
it's crumbly, it's got great texture, it's got a great look, and it's quite delicious.
What are you looking for, John, in there to know that it's doing its job?
It's a great question. The sugar, once it gets to about 250 degrees, it'll start to turn color. It'll start to take on its caramel color. So in the recipe, I put the temperature, and you can put a candy thermometer in it. But the good news is the color will tell you when it's ready. So we'll let that sugar continue to cook until it gets to the color we want. When you add the baking soda to it, it creates a chemical reaction and will start to almost volcano up a little bit. So you want to make sure that you make this in a pot large enough to allow for that expansion.
Or you will have a volcano of sugar, of 300-degree sugar
Correct.
on your oven.
But if you didn't want to do that and run that risk, simply omit the baking soda, and that could create a very similar effect. It'll be a little denser. It won't be as aerated as this honeycomb. So that's what I'm looking for. And then going back to our squash, we've got our squash, and typically when you make a concrete, we put our custard and usually two to three different toppings into it. We've got our base, really rich custard, and then we'll add, let's say it's raspberry sauce and maybe some chopped cookies in there, and maybe another texture, maybe it's marshmallow, and then we'll quickly spin it all together, so when you do experience it, you've got those great flavors and great textures. One of the things I wanted to show today is to do maybe a variation, and not exactly that. So I've got this beautiful squash, and I wanted to showcase the squash as much as I wanted to showcase the other ingredients. So my thought was to actually put the custard mixed with the honeycomb right into the squash and kind of serve it that way. And that would sort of allow your guests to dig in as much or as little as they like into it. So I thought that'd be kind of fun and sort of showcase the vegetable and all the great work by the farmers who did what they did.
What a cool plate too to have set down on a Thanksgiving table is like a dessert in a literal squash bowl.
Checking on my caramel. Probably got a couple of minutes left. And it's worth noting, it's very important to have all your ingredients ready so you can do what you need to do without having to run for them last minute. So I have my whisk here. I have my pan. This is actually just what they call a silk pat. It's just an underliner that prevents anything from sticking. You can easily just use a cookie sheet or parchment paper. Can do the job as well.
And John, I know that the squash seeds are going in this. Did you roast them?
I did. I first boiled them in some lightly salted water because they need to cook. They're raw, and then I've toasted them to further enhance their flavor. And now we're going to add them to the caramel. So they're getting cooked. They're getting a lot of love, as they should. So you can. I don't know if you can see this, but the caramel is starting to happen here.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
So I'm just going to swirl the pan a little bit. This is one of those things where if you turn your back too long, you could burn it. You don't want to do that. So probably 10 more seconds, and then we're ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like this is this is the project where you don't do something else at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Don't check your phone now. Now's not the time to check your phone. So now I've got my caramel exactly where I want. And there's so much heat in this. This is cooking as I'm holding it. I actually pulled it off probably 20 seconds prematurely, just so I could A, show you, and then B, we can just watch it cook. So now we're ready. So here's my baking soda. Gonna go right into it. And I'm gonna give it a little mix. And you see the color changes, and it starts to get a little thicker and aerate, almost like egg whites if you were whipping them. Okay, got that. Now I'm cleaning off you don't want to touch this either. This gets really hot. Now I'm going to switch over to another spoon. Before I do that, I'm going to add my salt and my pumpkin seeds. One final mix. And then I want to make sure I get everything out. You could leave it as it was. I could spread it out a little bit, which I'm doing now. And really, all these tools where things stick to, it's very easy to clean. You just fill it up with water, boil it, and then dump it out, and then wash the pot. If you tried to actually scrub that, you'd be there for a week. And that's it. And then I take some additional pumpkin seeds and just kind of stick them on top.
And how long does it take for that to cool down?
Probably about an hour, half hour. Okay. It's really hot now. And I would just put it on a rack to cool. And this is what we have that we broke. It's really fun.
So cool.
You can put it in an airtight container and leave it room temperature, and it'd be good for a couple of weeks.
as if anyone would allow that to sit uneaten for a couple of weeks.
It's delicious.
I envy their restraint. That would not exist for more than a day in my house. I wanted to take some inspiration for what is going to go in our glass today from your sort of like slightly unique perspective on a Thanksgiving meal, which was using the fried chicken sandwich and so all of the things that are in like season, but maybe not like you didn't make a turkey sandwich with mashed potatoes on it. And I was like, I can do that too. I can be like a little bit, can step it up a notch. There are so many traditional Thanksgiving wines that people think of, especially if you kind of go back into when we used to really be specific about what wine goes with what season. In the old days, it was very much like a Gewürztraminer and a Beaujolais Nouveau. Those are like your Thanksgiving wines. You drink Gewürztraminer and Beaujolais Nouveau, a white and a red. I agree with those things to a degree, and I kind of used them to sort of build off of that. But both of the wines that I picked today are a little bit different. I'll start with I have a white and a red. We'll start with our white. So I actually picked a Riesling blend as my preferred white, partly because what I love about Riesling, and we're starting to sort of shift our Gewürztraminer production in this direction too, is that super high acid that Riesling exhibits so beautifully. People think that Riesling is a sweet wine, and that is not always the case. There are wines that are made, particularly in Germany, or even in Alsace and a part of France, where they do leave residual sugar in the Rieslings. However, lots and lots and lots of Riesling producers make a bone dry Riesling that has a stunning acidity to it. And what's really cool about having a high acid wine with a large meal full of lots of different kinds of fats is that the acid in the Riesling really cuts through those things without overpowering them. So unlike a super oaky Chardonnay that's going to sort of mute all of the flavors of the food that you're eating because it has such a prominent flavor, Riesling really doesn't do that. It's such a beautiful pairing food with rich, heavy meals. And what's cool about this one, so this is actually, it is a blend. It's called Edelsvicker, which is basically means field blend.
Okay.
It's predominantly Riesling from New York State. I am a huge supporter of local. New York State actually makes some incredible wines. This is from the Finger Lakes region. The producer of this particular wine is called Bloomer Creek. One of my favorites in the Finger Lakes region because they really try to leave out any sort of chemical additive. They are biodynamically farmed. They're a very small organization, and everybody is involved in every piece of it. So it's really, they're very, very passionate about their wines and making sure that they're as high quality as possible. This is the majority Riesling. It does have some Gewürztraminer in it. So we're still like nodding to that old school style, but it maintains a super bright acidity, which pairs so beautifully with a fried chicken or something that has a dairy base, because while it won't kind of leave you overwhelmed and not tasting any of the things, it will just sort of enhance all of those flavors that are in the food. And again, I love this producer so much. So I'm a huge supporter of buying local, supporting local when I can. And then for my red, I stuck with Beaujolais because it's seasonal and it's a very important part of the French culture, actually, Beaujolais and how it sort of pairs beautifully with fall foods. But I am not a huge Beaujolais Nouveau fan. So Beaujolais Nouveau is the grapes that were picked this year. So they were picked in September, and they basically speed through the process of making wine however they need to release that wine in November. A traditional bottle of dry wine, it wouldn't be released until the following spring because it takes time to ferment and to sort of sit and make itself beautiful. So rather than doing a Beaujolais Nouveau, this is actually a Beaujolais Cru. So the Cru Beaujolais, there's 10, I believe, villages that have earned the title of Cru, which just basically means it's considered sort of the top-notch Beaujolais wines. Beaujolais, if it says Beaujolais on a label, it has to be a red wine and it has to be made from Gamay. That is the grape that is in this. You will not see that word anywhere on this label, but just know that that's what's in there. This is a 2018 from Morgon. Again, Morgon is just a name of a town in Beaujolais. But they make some really exceptional Beaujolais. It has a little bit more of a a richness and a flavor, which for me in my red wines, I love something that is a little bit more substantial. But what's great about Beaujolais, again, with a dish that, or a spread, I should say, that has a lot going on, is that it is low alcohol and it is low tannin. So it's not going to overpower your palate and make it so that you aren't tasting any of the wonderful things that are on your plate. And the low alcohol has another side effect, which is maybe you'll actually make it through Thanksgiving dinner this time without having to keel over halfway through. I know that the Thanksgiving Day nap is very important to some people and some families, so I don't want to take that from you, but I would love for you to choose to have it rather than feel like you had to because your wines were a little bit too heavy. So if you want to go with the Beaujolais, if Beaujolais Nouveau is your thing and you're like super into it, I get that. There are some really exceptional producers out there that make it. Add that extra $1 to the bottle price to see if we can like ranch it up a little bit to get some of the chemicals out of it. If Beaujolais Cru feels a little bit either too pricey, this is a $22 bottle, so it's not a super expensive wine by any means. But another great way to buy Beaujolais is Beaujolais Village. It literally says village, Beaujolais Village. And what that is basically a slightly larger region than this tiny little town where this was made. But they make exceptional wines and they're very inexpensive. Beaujolais in general, unless you get like super fancy, is very, very accessible wine for a price point, and you're going to get a lot of wine for your buck. So it's a great kind of way to explore a region of wine that is very tied into the fall season. And even though it's a French wine, the American culture of the Thanksgiving season, without sort of feeling like you have to break the bank or drop a huge amount of money on a bottle of wine. So I picked one of each, both of which actually are under $25. This one is like, I think a $17 bottle. So again, not breaking the bank by any means, both low alcohol, both high acidity, to sort of complement all of the delicious food, but not overpower it or not be able to stand up to it either. We want it to sort of participate in the meal without being too loud or too quiet on either side. So those are my wines that I picked. Something for everybody, I hope.
I love that. Bravo. I mean, they sound phenomenal. I love your thought process in choosing them, and I can't wait to try them.
Thank you. And I really, it was important to me knowing that Shake Shack worked so hard at using local purveyors to at least try to do the same in my wine choices and give New York State their due, because they really do make exceptional, particularly white wines, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
Up in the Finger Lakes, they make some really, really special stuff.
Well, I know what I'll be drinking this holiday season. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Well, I'll cheers a bottle to you.
Cheers.
And since you cheersed me a sandwich, that feels appropriate. And I really do appreciate you letting me come and crash your cooking process and bring some libations to the table as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, I had a blast. I've just learned a lot, and appreciate you, sharing your knowledge and having some fun with me today.